good, y'all? It's your boy Jay back at it again. And today we got which MCs can pass My Hero Academia's hero course by the salad bar. Follow me on both Jays here, Jays there. Get tapped on my socials. And without any more yapping, let's get right into it.
Let's take a couple iconic shonen MCs and put them into My Hero Academia. Who has what it takes to become a pro hero? And how successful would they actually be as heroes? Based on some suggestions, I have a handful of characters here.
I feel like off rip, he's passing, and he's passing.
This video will be kind of similar to my JoJo's and JJK video and the Hunter exam video. We'll be giving each of these characters unique and fitting quirks, as well as seeing if they have what it takes to pass all the challenges they may face. By the way, this is not a power scaling video. In the Hunter exam video, I kind of focus on that a little too much, but here, it's irrelevant. We're essentially making
it's powers, intelligence, and morals as well.
New powers and stories for all the characters here anyways. This will be about their mentality, what quirks they'd have, how they'd use them, and things like that. We also might give them support items if it fits. My Hero Academia makes it very clear that you can't be a great hero just with amazing power alone. There's way more to it than just that. We'll be looking at how all these characters handle the entrance exam, sports festival, internships, final exams, licensing, and the work study. We'll also grade them with the same stats My Hero Academia uses: power, speed, technique, intelligence, and cooperativeness. These stats are rated 1 to 5, with some characters getting a 6 for those with exceptional circumstances. Like All Might, for example, has a 6 for power. Plus, we'll cover each character's motivation for being a hero and who their primary mentor or role model may be. For this roster, I took characters that are at least close to Deku's age, since they're enrolling in UA. They're not exactly the same, but they're going to be close enough. We'll assume they're all starting at square one and just entering UA. And there will be some manga spoilers in regards to each of the characters' powers. Not for all of them, just some of them. Here's who we have: Yuji Itadori, Asta, Giorno Giovanna, Gon Freaks, Goku, Ichigo, Edward Elric, Mob, and Luffy before he set sail. Also, we have one surprise at the end. Someone not grouped in with these people. A lot of people requested Naruto in the last video, but I still have not read that series. And yeah,
Then they ain't read Naruto? That's crazy!
How crazy that is. I guess that's kind of a running joke in my videos at this point, but yeah, I can't cover him here since—
Bro, you gotta read Naruto, nigga, bro. It's one of the staples of anime, bro. You gotta watch and or read Naruto.
I know nothing about it.
Come on, gang.
All of them will have their personalities based on their first chapter's appearance, and again, we're gonna assume they're starting high school like Deku. With some characters like Gon or Goku, for example, we have to adjust their age a bit. But keep that all in mind because I won't outwardly mention all of this later on. Just assume they're basically starting in the same place as Deku. And I know this is a long intro, but one more thing. For the sake of simplicity, any trials that they go through here are the same ones Deku went through. So the tests, the sports festival trials, and everything else, those are the same. However, keep in mind they won't be encountering any of the villains that Deku encounters. This will just be seeing if they could pass the standard curriculum. If we include stuff like
All Might ain't had to do that nigga like that, bro.
villains that Deku encounters. This will just be seeing if they
Nigga
could pass the
face palmed
standard
them into the
curriculum.
dirt.
If we
all that elbow grease in your shit.
included stuff like Stain, the Hideout Raid, anything like that, that pretty much delves into what if fanfic territory, which is too subjective and nuanced. I know we kind of already are in that territory, but with the regular curriculum, we're at least somewhat grounded and objective. First, we'll start with Yuji. Following the death of his grandfather, he's motivated to enroll at UA. His quirk is called Shrine. You see what I mean about the powers? Yuji obviously didn't have this right away. But this is the type of things we'll do for quirks in this video. Anyways, Yuji's quirk deals with food preparation. He can cut things or ignite them. Currently, he mostly works with the slicing parts, but hopes to get better use of the flames one day. Also, he's pretty strong physically. As of writing, Yuji only just started using Shrine, but it's safe to assume it functions just like Sukuna's version of it, so his quirk will be like that here. And for future characters, this is the type of spoilers I'm talking about. We're not really going beyond this, we're just discussing actual powers. Anyways, let's rate Yuji. For power, he's at a 5 out of 5. Speed, 5 out of 5. Technique, 4 out of 5. Intelligence, 3 out of 5. Pretty standard. Cooperativeness, 4 out of 5.
Damn, nigga stats pretty good.
Pretty good stats all around. His most notable stats are obviously his physical power.
And his left-right ability.
For motivation, he wants to ensure everyone around him can have a proper death, and he also wants to find a fulfilling purpose in life. To achieve both of those, the best thing he could do is become a hero. For the entrance exam, the written test is probably going to be the hardest part for Yuji.
Yeah,
he's not great at
the hardest part of these written exams. Itadori's not Kid Goku level stupid, but he's also not really smart
academically, but we don't necessarily know the full contents of the written test, and I feel like he'd be fine here, even though he's a below average student. As for the physical test, he'll be perfectly fine there. The only issue would be him trying to apply Shrine, but of course that would be good against the robots here. And who knows, he might actually pick up some rescue points along the way for helping people. His quirk is actually pretty great for this. Imagine him using it to save someone under rubble or things like that. Yuji might also have a similar predicament to Shinzo, where he feels his quirk is that of a villain's. I mean, just look at it. You know who it's from. Now onto the sports festival. By now, Yuji probably has more experience with his quirk. Maybe he's not a master of it here. This is something that's really hard to practice with after all. And he'd probably mostly be focused on the slashes because that's the main part of it. He could use it on the environment around him, send non-lethal slashes through the air, or use it to nullify attacks somehow. The first few events won't really be too big of an issue for him, like he'd probably finish first place in the run, which means he'd be a big target in the cavalry battle.
Yeah, he would. Nigga runs like... Didn't he run like some type of crazy mile time on some shit? Hold on, bro. Hold on. Whoa, what did he run? Some crazy shit? Running 50 meters in 3 seconds, 37 miles per hour. Like, this nigga, like, bro, he's easily doing that shit. That nigga was superhuman, bro.
Applying his quirk here would be pretty tough, but at least he would cooperate with whoever is on his team. Although, given the fact that he has the most points, it would be hard to find a good team. He could even use his quirk from a distance to cut off the headbands people are holding. For the tournament though, he could at least make use of his environment, but like cutting up the arena and using the rubble to help him. Although, given how lethal his quirk is, he might hold back here in the actual fight. But he's physically strong at least. I could see him making it pretty far. As for the internship, a good performance in the festival means good offers for an internship. I'm not really too sure which hero would be the best for him. Maybe Edshot could help here, for example. Part of his quirk involves using himself as a sharp weapon after all. Or maybe even someone like Crust or Fat Gum. A shield needs a sword after all. Especially with someone like Fat Gum, if he's with Kirishima, that would be perfect. For the final exams, cooperation is obviously key here, and Yuji would be pretty fine in that regard. It all depends who his partner is and which hero he's up against, but now he'd likely have some sort of application of his quirk that could help in situations like this. Plus, his persistence would make it really hard to stop him. I feel he'd be fine here. For licensing, this also wouldn't really be a big issue. Of course, he has great offensive capabilities, but for rescue, his quirk is perfect. Plus, there's the aspect of Yuji already wanting to save people. For the work study, now that he has more knowledge of his quirk, particularly the fire part of it, he could still go with the heroes that I mentioned before. His fire isn't like the Todoroki families, but maybe even Endeavor could help him find other ways to make his fire arrow work, alongside his slashes. It's a really powerful part of his quirk, but if it works just
busted as shit, nigga can cut anything.
Like it does in JJK, collateral damage will be a huge issue.
Yeah, that's the issue. His quirk is strictly offensive. In terms of dealing with enemies and cutting their ass, that's easy. But in terms of saving niggas, opening up Hell's Kitchen isn't the best for the
Obviously, he doesn't have the domain expansion nuke like Sukuna, so it's not like he's going to be doing that, but still, he has to worry about collateral damage regardless. Besides the other heroes I mentioned, maybe a fitting mentor for him would be someone like Sir Night-Eye or maybe Aizawa. I'm thinking of someone who would have an influence on him similar to Nanami. Of course, he can't do his internships or work studies with Aizawa, but Night-Eye is an option. He's someone who's serious but dependable. He'd be a pretty good stand-in for Nanami here. Overall, he'd be decently successful as a hero. His mental state and his physical stats are perfect for this. His biggest issue would be finding an application for his quirk, and getting over the idea that his quirk is that of a villain's. Next on to Asta. He of course shares some similarities with Deku.
Strong as shit, dumber than Yuji. That's his problem.
Already, both in terms of motivation and somewhat in how his power works. He would of course strive to be a hero here too.
What would his quirk be? Nullify other quirks?
Just replace his goal of Wizard King with that of being the #1 pro hero. For his quirk, at first he's seemingly quirkless. Like Deku, he thought he would be stuck as quirkless forever. However, he's trained rigorously in order to grow physically, and it turns out he actually does have a quirk. The reason he never realized this is because of how particular his quirk is. It's simply called anti-quirk. He generates a strange power that can coat other objects, and when someone comes in contact with it, their quirk stops working until the energy fully
That's the same thing, like, you know, the ability to turn off quirks. Yeah, this nigga's busted as fuck. You got the power to turn off quirks. You're strong as hell. You're good morally. You're just stupid. That's his only.
He'll probably have
issue.
a couple different support items too. For example, he's a skilled sword fighter, but he won't really be using that too much here because he's not going to be killing opponents. Although in training it's good to work with different weapons. Maybe he'll have something non-lethal like a bat. And given the nature of how his power works as a quirk here, why not give him some projectiles so he could throw that energy? Or maybe even a scarf like Aizawa's, which could be used for capture and eliminating a quirk. For his motivation, of course he developed his quirk very late, and never even realized he had one in the first place. To compensate, he focused all on raw power and trained himself to his limits. It's pretty obvious who his mentor would be here, Aizawa. Even though their quirks work differently, obviously they both focus on stopping other quirks. For power, he's easily at 5 out of 5. Same for speed. For technique, we'll put him at 4 out of 5. Intelligence, probably 2 out of 5. I don't imagine him being very book smart here, even though he's definitely battle smart.
Definitely battle smart, competitive. I think he's very, like, we've seen his South the Black Bulls. He's able to very effectively fight us alongside not only them, but Yami and other captains.
Finally, a 4 out of 5 for cooperativeness.
Yeah, definitely.
Very great stats all around. Now onto the entrance exam. If Deku could make it, I think Asta could too. From the very beginning.
The thing about characters like Asta, Ichigo, their stats are pretty damn high off the first episode. Luffy, like a lot of these characters are going to be stronger than Deku when they took these exams. I'm not gonna lie. Luffy, off the first episode, was dogging most niggas in the East Blue. Asta was strong enough to speed blitz somebody like Seke. Ichigo was already doing superhuman feats in terms of just pure athleticism. Like, this was like a lot of these MCs is already busted out the gate, to be real with you.
Absurd resilience and power. Not to mention, he doesn't back down protecting others. He might even get rescue points at the very least, if he doesn't figure out how to destroy any of the bots, which, even with his great power, would be pretty tough. His quirk here can't really do too much in the exam. Honestly, this might be the toughest part for him. The written exam wouldn't be his strong suit, and his quirk isn't really suited for the physical part of the exam. It would be really hard, but I think he can pull through. The sports festival will be a cakewalk for him though. The obstacle race would be really easy for him to pull off. His quirk will also be really good for the cavalry battle, especially if he coats his energy around the headband so it eliminates quirks when people try and take the headbands from him. And as for the tournament part, I feel like he could even win this. His biggest issue is the fact that he needs to be up close to someone for his quirk to work, unless he uses a projectile with his energy as part
Yeah,
of
but
it.
I think it's his speed would be able to compensate for that shit.
But think about how stacked this is in his favor. He'll turn off other quirks, and then he could use his raw power to win. And with how strong he is to begin with, at that point it should be pretty easy. Which means for the internship, he'll probably get a lot of offers. I can't think of a particular hero that he'd work with here.
Miracle might be the best bet, but I don't know. Aizawa, most likely either. I'm pretty good at Aizawa because they both turn off quirks.
It'd be a good idea because he'd have to rely a lot on his fighting skills, and she could really help with that too. But again, I'm not really sure who to place him with. If Aizawa were doing internships, I'd definitely say him. The final exam should be an easy pass for him, especially given his cooperation. And from here on out, it should be much easier.
Man, I forget how many exams these niggas had to do. Goddamn. These niggas like 6 exams. Shit.
Any issues for licensing, especially with his desire to save people, and just a kind of heroic nature in general. And for the work study, he already has a pretty good resume. So even though I don't have a solid idea of what agency he'd work with, he should be fine here. And even though his internship and work study won't be with Aizawa, he definitely would be a mentor for Asta. I'm sure he'd take a liking to him. Overall, he has what it takes to be a hero. The biggest hurdle is the first step. But as he learns about his power more and grows with it, and even figures out what type of support items to use, I could see him being really successful with this. Next, Giorno. His quirk is pretty straightforward. It's called Gold Experience. He can manipulate life, and the quirk works pretty much like how his stand works in Part 5.
Busted ass.
Not
nigga.
Requiem, just regular Gold Experience. For power, he's at a 2 out of 5. For speed, 3 out of 5.
Yeah, Giorno's not the best when it comes to just... JoJo characters aren't the best stat-wise, but in terms of just in terms of abilities, these niggas be crazy.
Technique, 5 out of 5. Intelligence, 5 out of 5. Cooperativeness, 3 out of 5. He likes to do his own thing a lot, but with the right group he can cooperate really well. Again, since we're basing this off of how he was in the beginning, he very much looks out for himself, but his growth potential is there. Physically he might not seem like much, but his intellect and technique really help him in any sort of battle. But he's not going to be a pro hero here. For his motivation, he's an orphan that lived close to the underworld. He takes a different route from everyone else, aiming to be a mobster. There are people in particular that he admires, but mostly he views them as a bad thing. Especially when he finds out some of the stuff that's going on, mainly what Overhaul's doing, because this is the group he's part of. He's not going to be a pro hero, he's going to take Overhaul's place. Ironically enough, Overhaul might find his quirk appealing due to the similar nature of it, especially when it comes to his test on Eri. The two would definitely be using each other in the long run, but I would think—
No, I ain't gonna lie, my nigga. Gorno, if Gorno's a villain, that's bad. That's bad, bro. That's bad. Him and Overhaul working together them niggas might clear verse. I ain't gonna front.
Giorno could forge his own path through and defeat Overhaul at some point, taking over the organization, if not at least helping it fall apart. His quirk would also perfectly counter Overhaul. It's really strange.
Speaking of Overhaul was so cold when he first came out. He had the plague mask, he had that drill. Then he just got hoed, like.
Like every part of his backstory, personality, and motivations fit perfectly with him being in this organization, even his power too. If he hypothetically did want to become a hero, in short, I think his conviction and intelligence would carry him through, although this path for him feels way more fitting. At least at first, he wouldn't desire to become a hero. Next, we have Gon. His quirk is also pretty straightforward. We'll just call it Enhancer, and usually for a support item, he carries a fishing pole. It's just a normal fishing pole, nothing crazy about it. His quirk works essentially like how his
You know, I don't know if we can let this nigga be a hero. He gonna crash out.
Works in Hunter x Hunter. And there's 3 attacks he relies on a lot. He can boost punches with rock, he can launch a ranged attack with paper, and he can make a sword with scissors. There are other things he could do, but those are his 3 signature moves. For his power, 6 out of 5. He's strong to begin with, and his quirk makes him even stronger.
Yeah, from the first jump of the episode, this nigga's strong as shit. Like, this little nigga was able to, like... this nigga from, like, the first episode with almost no like physical. Like I know he did nin training in the Heavens Arena, right? But he like after that, like even like the nin training was just like for your spiritual shit. This nigga was uprooting whole things of concrete, strong as shit.
Stronger. Speed, 5 out of 5. Again, very physically impressive.
Intelligence might be a 1 out of 5. I ain't gonna lie.
Technique, 3 out of 5. Maybe even 4. Intelligence, 2 out of 5. But if we're talking street smarts and survival skills, 6 out of 5.
Yeah, Gon knows his way around the land. In terms of knowing his way around the land, being able to fend for himself, Gon is pretty damn good at that.
For cooperativeness, 4 out of 5. He's quite charismatic and outgoing, but his impulsive side and anger can make him act rash and make him act on his own. The entrance exam would be a pretty simple pass here. Knowing Gon, he'd probably help people out without even realizing he should be doing that. Even if he doesn't, the obstacles would be no problem. His
Obstacle course is going to be a breeze for this little nigga.
Pull gives extra mobility as well, and the written test might be an issue for him, knowing his lack of book smarts. But again, we don't really know what that test entails. At least for the physical test, he'd be more than okay. For the sports festival, I mean, just look at Hunter x Hunter. This is nothing he didn't already see in the Hunter exam. Of course, this is a different version of Gon, and he hasn't experienced the Hunter exam. But point being, for the character he's
but even just out the jump, this nigga was already hella athletic, hella good when it came to the hands, strength. His ability to navigate certain situations was top tier. Like, in terms of book smarts, he's low. But in terms of, like, street smarts and intuition, that shit is at least, like, a 4. So, Gon is doing alright. Gon is doing alright pre-digs.
Based on, he should be fine. An endurance test, a team test, and a tournament. That's going to be no issue. He'd probably even go pretty far in the...
This holiday season,
Drink my water right quick. Gotta stay hydrated. You know what I'm saying? When you talking, your throat gets sore and all that. You feel me? So we gotta get that. You know what I'm saying? That water.
Or in the tournament. Maybe even winning it all. And if these students were all together, him and Asta would be a really interesting matchup. Even if Asta cancels out his quirk, it's raw power versus raw power. And with a good sports festival performance, he'd get a good internship. Maybe Best Jeanist would take him in, and Gon would go for it because of his high rank. It would be for the same reasons he took Bakugo in. Maybe just to make him more cordial. Fat Gum could be a good option too. They could definitely work well together because of Fat Gum's defensive traits and Gon's offensive traits. And it could help Gon work more on his defense, alongside the fact that Fat Gum could be a punching bag for him essentially. I don't see any issues for the license exam either. Gon is powerful, he'd be good at rescue, and for both phases he should be able to hold his own. Definitely in the first phase he'll be fine fighting others. In the second phase, it really depends on how he acts. Like, it definitely wouldn't be a perfect score, but I think it would be good enough to pass.
That's the problem with Gon. He's too hard-headed. He has crash-out tendencies. I know that word gets thrown around more than thoughts. You know what I'm saying? 304s and all that, but it's like... You gotta realize this nigga a menace, bro.
The work study, finding a hero that's right for him may be tough, because who could best refine his quirk? Well, once more, maybe Fat Gum again. And especially if he worked with Fat Gum before, they'd probably get along pretty well too.
I'm thinking Fat Gum or Grandarino.
For motivation, it's pretty simple. His father is probably going to be a great hero in this verse as well. Is he a deadbeat in this verse too? Who knows? Point being, Gon wants to get to his level. So his role model will just be Jean again. Pretty straightforward. Overall, I would think Gon has what it takes to be a hero. He would face some hurdles though. For one, his anger in some moments may cause him to act too rash.
I already talked about this in one of them videos, boy. On the main channel. MCs be crazy as fuck. This nigga was going crazy. That nigga said, if you talk, I'll kill you too.
Also, when failing at something, it might be a major setback for him. Think of what happened to him like when Kite died. He'll often blame himself for things. On top of that, he'll have to learn to make tough choices sometimes. In Hunter x Hunter, we saw him deal with that same thing. And here as a hero, it would be no different. Plus, another ability he might have is summoning all of his power at once, basically forcing himself to be at the peak of his power, becoming adult Gon. This will only be used in moments of desperation because it could hospitalize him. But when using this, he has strength on par with the top pro heroes. Now on to Goku. We'll use a version of him before the 22nd World Tournament. So he's already seen some
Okay, fair.
with the same character growth and definitely has a lot of the same techniques. His quirk is called Great Ape. Simply put, it gives him the powers of a giant ape. In a full moon, he actually transforms completely, losing control. But outside of this, normally he has a monkey tail, and he has immense boosts in power from rage. In regular fights, his power grows as his battle spirit flares up. Due to the physical nature of his quirk, he actually grew up learning martial arts. Plus, his tail could help him a ton here since it's an extra limb. It's not a strong tail like Ojiro's tail, for example, and it's more like a weaker arm for him. And also, one downside of it is the fact that it's kind of a weak point. But still, it's an extra limb that he could utilize in multiple...
Yeah, but Goku can train that. Okay, this is just before 22nd. Goku by then trained
ways, which is great for martial arts and acrobatics. Also, becoming a helicopter. His support item is Nyoibo, aka the Power Pole, a staff made of a durable but light alloy. It can quickly extend and retract. Of course, this has a limit to how far it can extend, but Goku's really good at utilizing it for fighting, and a staff that quickly changes sizes can really trip up some opponents. For stats, his power is 4 normally. In battle, it raises to 5, also while enraged. But when he becomes giant under a full moon, his power reaches a terrifying level of 6. The downside to this great power is the fact that he can't control it, and the fact that it only comes out in a full moon. But when he does use it, he's nigh unstoppable. For speed, he's at a 4. For technique, he's at a 6, because he's a genius.
I feel like Goku's stats make sense. I'd probably give, if this is just before 22nd, I'd probably give him like a 5 in terms of power, but technique is 100% a 6.
Martial artist. For intelligence, he's at a 2. Not really exceptional, of course. And for cooperativeness, that's also at a 2.
Definitely. Goku does not like working with other niggas. Goku says, nigga, I want to do this shit by myself. I mean, Goku spends most of his time in solitude training, to be real with you. I am not gonna lie.
He often likes working alone, and will do his own thing a lot. As for the entrance exam, that's an easy pass. The written exam would be the biggest issue for him. But for the physical exam, he'd be perfectly fine. He probably wouldn't intentionally save anyone either. He would just rack up a bunch of points on his own.
Yeah, Goku definitely. Goku saves people if they need saving, but that nigga racking up the kill streak. That nigga putting up wilt numbers in that bit. I ain't gonna lie.
Stats-wise, he could excel here. His issue would be actually cooperating during the cavalry battle, and this may cost him in the long run. For the obstacle run, he's gonna be fine. But if he screws up the cavalry battle, that could hurt his chances of going further.
Most definitely. Goku's not, especially Kid Goku, he's not a cooperative type of person. He much rather just do shit by himself. Right? Because unlike even like Asta or Gon, where they had to work together early on in the series to get it out somewhere, Goku, for the most part, just did most of the, the trials by himself in the OG Dragon Ball, to be real with you.
But if he's in the tournament, he'd be perfectly fine there. He'd probably even win. He would just have to cooperate in the previous challenge. For an internship, he would definitely be sought after to some extent. He has great power and great technique. The biggest issue is the fact that he doesn't really cooperate with others too well, and he'd have to solve his other biggest issue, the fact that he doesn't really know what he wants to do as a hero. We'll get more into this later. To some extent, he might be a somewhat undesirable candidate because
you can't just be like, I want to fight strong niggas. That's not a reason.
His power is amazing, but he has way too much to work on. But thankfully, his charisma, power, and willingness to grow would give him at least something. Maybe he'd end up with a fellow martial artist like Gunhead. In the final exams, Goku likes to do his own thing. That's not to say he can't fight with others, but if you look at how he is in Dragon Ball, even nowadays, there are a lot of times where he just fights alone. And in moments when he does have to use teamwork, occasionally there are some roadblocks. For this part, there are a lot of variables. It might be tough to pass, and he might even fail. Unless by now he's learned to work with others really well, which is definitely a possibility. I feel like this would be more of an issue when he's starting out at UA. But still, it's something he would need to work on. At least when he is fighting solo, he could hold his own really well. As for licensing, I think he'd be fine in the physical part of it, but he might fail at the rescue section of it. Again, it really depends how much he's developed by this point.
Rescue? I don't know. Kid Goku's not the... Is he selfish? Yeah, but he's also a kind person. I don't know. Kid Goku's very kind. And kind of, not like a pro-lawful way, but more in like a just, if I'm here and I can help, I'm just going to help you type of way, you feel me?
Again, we'll get into in a bit. For the work study, of course, he's going to work to improve his power and maybe even try and get control of Great Ape, which only comes out once in a blue moon. Or, I guess, once in a full moon. But also, maybe he could find a better way to control his anger, applying that to this power. Of course, Goku's rage influencing how he fights isn't this big of an aspect of the main story, but it's still there just enough that I think it's fair to apply it to his quirk here. And as you could probably tell by now, his quirk is kind of an amalgamation of things. Not just him, but even taking influence from Gohan and Vegeta. As a side note, Gohan would fit perfectly here. Like, he even already has a hero name, Great Saiyaman. Huh, someone should make a video about Gohan being in My Hero Academia. Real ones know what I'm referring to.
Yeah, Gohan's definitely better fit for this than Goku. Gohan is definitely more the hero type, go out to save people. Goku's more of the, I want to fight strong niggas, but if there's people needing me saved, I'll save them. If I have to save the planet, I'll save the planet, right? But Goku's not Mr. I'm going to go around the planet just to save random people I don't know. Goku's nearly not that type of guy.
As for his motivation, Goku in the main story is definitely not a hero. Well, in the original story at least. If you grew up with the original Funimation dub, it makes him sound way different. But he was never meant to be characterized as some sort of Superman-like figure. He does heroic things, but he's not a hero. It's a small but important distinction.
Definitely.
His main motivation isn't to help people and be completely selfless. That's kind of just a side effect of what he does. He likes to push himself to his limits and have fun in fights. Here, he becomes a hero because it lets him actually use his quirk to its fullest, and it lets him push himself to become the strongest person in the world. Of course, this won't work in his favor. He needs to actually want to be a hero too. The biggest challenge for him will be learning responsibility and understanding what being a hero really entails. Unlike Giorno, and someone we'll cover later, I don't think he'd actively work outside of the realm of heroes either. He definitely wouldn't be a villain, and as for a vigilante, I guess he could fit in a role like that, but going through the hero route, he gets much more experience and gets to actually train with the strongest. I feel like he'd appreciate that aspect more. Because while he can just fight whoever he wants as a vigilante and doesn't really have to go by the rules, I feel it would be more fulfilling for him to be surrounded by exceptional people and join the hero course, even though it means more restrictions and less fighting on his own. He'd have to learn the same things that Bakugo realizes and eventually even Endeavor realizes. Becoming the strongest isn't just about physical power, especially in a world where they have to be heroes. So that's why Goku's in such a weird spot for me here, because I feel like the hero course would be the best for him, but at the same time, it's not a perfect fit.
Yeah, definitely. Goku's definitely an anomaly, because especially we're talking the Japanese OG one, he's not a hero in the OG Dragon Ball. Yes, he saves people. Yes, he does really good deeds. Yes, he's pure heart. But in terms of like going around saving people just to save people, he's not that type of person. Goku in OG Dragon Ball especially was more focused on just his path to power, getting stronger, improving in martial arts. It was only in Z when he really fully realized the responsibility of protecting the Earth and saving the universe and all that.
He'd have to do a lot of soul searching and figure out what he specifically wants to do, and hopefully he'd eventually be molded into a hero. As for a mentor or role model, I'd assume someone like Master Roshi exists here, and he'd be a mentor. If not Grandpa Gohan, someone who teaches him martial arts, and if Roshi's here, he probably has a quirk that gives him extended life. But as for a role model, it would probably be All Might. He's the strongest person around, and Goku aspires to be like that one day. Overall, Goku would definitely struggle a lot, not because of his power or technique, but because of his mindset. Would he even really want to be a hero? Since we're using an in-character Goku, I don't necessarily know. He's not a hero, he fights mostly for fun. There are heroic aspects to him, so maybe he can eventually become a real hero. A lot of his biggest obstacles would involve that. It's kind of like the things I covered about Endeavor and All Might in that video essay I made about writing the strongest archetype. I'll link it here if you want to check.
Goku, I don't know. Goku's very interesting. Because on one hand, he has the strength, the speed, the durability, all the stats to become a hero. He's even a good person, right? Very good person. But he doesn't have the desire to go around saving people, following all the rules and regulations when it comes to being a hero. He's going to definitely like the experience of being able to be put in dangerous situations where he can fight niggas. But in terms of actually just wanting to save people, I don't know. Goku's very interesting in that regard.
That out. Next, Ichigo. Just a quick side note, I only just started reading Bleach like a few weeks before recording this, and yeah, I know, it's crazy. My friends have already made fun of me for it too.
You're crazy for not reading Bleach and Naruto. You waited this long to read some of the biggest hitters in this industry. You're wild.
Same for the Naruto stuff, but at least I'm actually reading Bleach here. So a lot of what I'm saying is based off the first arc of it, and I do know about some of the reveals later on in the story, but just keep that in mind. Especially after the thing with Yusuke in my Hunter exam video, yeah, I'm not surprised something like this is happening again. But if I miss anything, that's why. Although even though I'm not fully familiar with him or Bleach in general, it still definitely was worth it to include him here because his popularity. And in Chapter 1, he's exactly the age Deku was when he first enrolled at UA. So for multiple reasons, he fits perfectly in this video and deserves to be here. His quirk is Shinigami. This one's going to be kind of weird to fit as a quirk, but I think I have found a good workaround. This quirk allows him to manipulate energy from his soul and turn it into power. He could train to get more spiritual energy too. As a downside to this quirk, there's a limit to how much he could use, since it is being drawn from his soul. Stamina is the big issue, and overuse could really harm him. He can use this in multiple ways, but usually he creates weapons with it, often fighting with a sword, although he has to kind of do this non-lethally as a hero. So even though he does fight with a sword normally, like that's his signature thing, just like with Asta, it's kind of weird to fit a sword in here. So maybe he would work with other weapons too.
I mean, Ichigo has the hands. We know he has hands, nigga. I've made so many videos of just talking about this nigga. Shit, that was one of my first videos on the main channel. The first one that actually got attention. Ichigo, when it comes to the hands, is like that. We know that. He's good. He'll be fine.
He could also directly attack someone's soul with these powers, making him a really formidable opponent, especially if he applies these powers in other unique ways. He's not just limited to fighting with a sword. And he could use the same type of power to boost himself further.
Let me get the thumbnail right quick off you.
With these powers, making him a really formidable opponent, especially if he applies these powers in other unique ways.
Bro. That nigga clean, bro.
Not just limited to fighting with a sword. And he could use the same type of power to boost himself further. And as an awakening for this quirk, Bankai, obviously. I feel that's very fitting for a quirk awakening here. For power, we'll put him at a solid 5. Physically, he's already really powerful, and when he buffs himself with his quirk, it's even better. For speed, let's put him at a 3 or a 4. Nothing really crazy, but still notable at least. For technique, we'll give him a 4. He doesn't have full
actually pretty smart. I'd probably give him like a 4. Wasn't he one of the top in his classes?
3 of his quirk right away, and he does have some martial arts experience too, which is really helpful. But there is still room to grow. For intelligence, I think we could put him at a 4 because he's a pretty decent student already.
Yeah, he's a pretty damn good student, especially when you're fighting monsters on the side, bro.
Definitely not exceptional, but still above average, I'd say. For cooperativeness, usually he's a 2, but with friends he'd be a 4. It really all depends on who he's working with, because he's normally more to himself early on, but alongside certain people he cooperates better. So if he's with people he's familiar with, yeah, he could do better.
Yeah, I ain't gonna lie, if Ichigo fucks with you, nigga, that's like a 5 out of 5 cooperation, but if he don't, that nigga, bro, some nigga could deadass just be terrorizing some random aspect of the Bleach universe. That nigga does not care or know about it, my nigga. He does not care, bro. That nigga chilling.
I see no issue with the entrance exam. Assuming he's good enough with his quirk to make a strong sword, that would be really useful against robots, and this is one of the few cases where he could use a sword all out. He doesn't have to worry about being non-lethal here. Plus, he might even pick up points for rescue. As a good student, the written portion won't be an issue either. For the sports festival, his personality and demeanor may throw off his reputation a bit, but he will be a very clearly powerful hero.
Nah, Ichigo is definitely, early on in the series, he's definitely more towards the Bakugo than the Deku. I ain't gonna lie, he's 100% more like Bakugo. That nigga put up and said, hold on. Yo, 911. I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 5 bitch niggas. Like, bro, he about to get sent to the hospital. Yo, that was cold, bro. That was cold, bro.
Here. The obstacle run won't be an issue. Maybe the cavalry battle will be because he'll have to learn to cooperate with others, but unlike with Goku, I don't think this is going to be a huge issue, although he might get a bit hot-headed at some points. And if he does make it to the tournament, he could do well enough there, but I don't know if he'd really win, especially without full mastery of his quirk just yet. It all depends on how much he's adapted it to specific situations by now. For example, against someone like Bakugo, he'll need to use close quarters and ranged attacks, and depending on how much he's improved his quirk by this point, he might lack one or the other. And he'd also have to quickly adapt which weapons he uses if he manifests any.
I don't know, bro. That nigga Ichigo, when it comes to just getting a power-up mid-fight, I ain't gonna lie, Ichigo, when he locks in, that nigga gets like 15 times stronger. I ain't gonna lie.
Variables here in terms of how he'd perform in this part. So for an internship, finding a great internship may actually be an issue. It really all depends on his performance. We'll get back to this in the work study portion, specifically covering what heroes could help him. In the final exams, I see no issues. I'd assume he has much better control of his quirk by now. He'll have way more ways to use it, and he'll know everyone well enough to work as a strong duo here. And again, he's a great student. And again, nothing crazy for licensing. I see no issues here for either of the phases that he's in. He'll definitely pass both. For the work study, maybe Endeavor would be a great option for him to work with. When it comes to his quirk, Endeavor is really smart, especially because it has downsides to it. Ichigo really needs to learn his limits and how to apply his power to its fullest, without also exceeding his limits and hurting himself in the process. Plus, Endeavor can maybe help him find other ways to apply it, so he has an even greater arsenal, but also doesn't get burnt out. It'll be a focus on variety and efficiency, as well as mastery. For motivation, I'd say his motivations in Bleach pretty much line up with what a pro hero in My Hero.
Definitely. Ichigo just wants to save the people he loves and cares for dearly, so that's already a good enough motivation to be a hero.
Academia needs to be like, protecting those around him. Straightforward, but powerful. And perfect for this. He also has to be willing to make tough choices. Like, this is set up right in Chapter 2 of Bleach. Like, what Rukia tells him is basically what he needs here too. He has to commit to saving everyone, not just when it's convenient. And he has to be willing to make sacrifices too, being completely selfless in the process. For a mentor or role model, again, I'm still not too familiar with Bleach since I'm only partway through, but feel free to suggest anything in the comments. As for a hero he could work with, Vlad King might be a good fit too, besides just Endeavor. In case you forget, Vlad King's quirk lets him manipulate blood. And obviously as Class 1B's teacher, it would be even better if he ends up in Class 1B. But I'm mentioning him because he's using parts of himself as part of his power, which is similar to Ichigo's power here. So in some aspects, their quirks have similar downsides, and he can learn to be more efficient with his energy. Next on to Edward Elric. His quirk is pretty straightforward. It's alchemy. He can manipulate the shape of matter as long as there's an equivalent exchange. Weirdly enough, like Giorno, his quirk is also somewhat similar to Overhaul. Of course, there are differences, but still funny that there's another overlap here. And a pretty obvious support item, Automail. Assuming he actually has both his arms and legs here, these could just be external accessories that he manipulates, like armor that he wears on one arm and one leg. Although, who knows, maybe as a kid, he used his quirk in a reckless way, and he actually did lose an arm and a leg. In which case, it would be like the regular Automail. Actually, probably even better than Automail considering how futuristic My Hero Academia is. Like, in the cold, it might not have the downsides of giving him frostbite. and it could have some other nice tech features too.
So you only check it twice?
Full Metal Alchemist. Full Metal Alchemist. Yo, shout out my
For power, he's at a
dog.
solid 3. For speed, also a solid 3. For technique, knowing how he is in his own series, he's definitely at a 6. He has complete mastery over his quirk already. For intelligence, he's a 5, maybe even a 6. And for cooperativeness, considering how stubborn he could be, maybe he'll be at 2 starting out. In the entrance exam, his quirk is perfect for the physical part. Imagine how easily he could take down robots. And he could even take parts from them and turn them into weapons for himself to take down other robots with. The written part won't be an issue either. Pretty simple pass. For the sports festival, this is another place where he could really excel. In the run, his quirk could easily be used to get ahead of others and create other obstacles, also getting rid of obstacles for himself. This quirk would also be really insane for the cavalry battle. And even with his lack of cooperativeness, I feel like he'd get by here pretty well. In the tournament, he'd actually make it pretty far, but I feel like he'd be lacking physical power at the moment. Not that Edward's weak by any means, it's just that in his original story, he is obviously mostly known for his alchemy, not his physical power. But in the tournament, his quirk would definitely work really well for defense and offense, especially if he gets to use automail to its fullest here, assuming it's approved. And this might be where he finds someone to take an internship under, because Cementos is there, and he'd be a perfect fit for Edward's mentor. He needs to learn how to use his quirk without causing collateral damage. His quirk is really strong and even more versatile than Cementos, but at the cost of utilizing whatever's around him. It's really potent, but it's a double-edged sword. For the final exams, learning to cooperate might be an issue for him, due to his stubbornness and the fact that he likes to do his own thing, but by this point it probably won't be an issue. And in the training locations, he'd probably be placed in one where he's in a fake city, because this would be tailored for the students. So they'd also have to make sure he doesn't cause collateral damage, or at least keeps it to a bare minimum. So on top of working with someone else and fighting a pro hero, he'd need to focus on that, and I feel like he could get through this here. For licensing, he'll probably be fine. For the work study, again, Cementos would be a good fit. As for motivation, Edward grew up without a father. He disappeared, but apparently he has the same quirk as Edward. Same for his brother Alphonse too. As for his mother, she was killed by a villain. His brother's gonna follow in his footsteps one day too, especially considering the fact that they share the same quirk. I don't think he'd have any specific role model, but yeah, Cementos would be a perfect mentor for him.
Absolutely.
It's a pretty easy fit there. Next, Shigeo Kageyama. Mob is a unique case because I feel he wouldn't necessarily want to be a hero, but he definitely could become one. Originally in Mob Psycho, he felt lost and had to find his place. He never really did know what he wanted to do. Plus, despite the great power he had, it was kind of an afterthought to him. He was always way too focused on his own shortcomings and his regular life issues.
Bro, as
He
long
also
as
didn't
Mob
want to
walks
fully
in, that
define
nigga
it.
deadass might be the strongest nigga in the show, bro.
Maybe he ends up going to this school because his boss would recommend it. He has an after-school job, and apparently, his boss has a powerful quirk that lets him do things similar to Mob, but he never outright showcases it. It's Reigen Arataka. He claims he could have been a pro hero, but he didn't want it. Presumably, he even got a license at one point, but Mob doesn't know if any of this is true. Although, he takes interest in this and enrolls in UA, thanks to Reigen's influence. And he hopes by doing this he could find out what he wants to do and figure things out for himself. His quirk is pretty obvious, Esper. It works exactly like it does normally. He has crazy psychic abilities. His quirk awakening is Explosion. When he's over-emotional, his power is completely uninhibited. And this is an awakening that he has even before entering UA, and it's particularly dangerous. He needs to learn how to control it, especially as a hero. Side note, Reigen's quirk would probably be something like Coincidence. We could just as easily make him quirkless, but I think this one's kind of fitting. He actually does think he's quirkless, but this quirk is a really potent one. It lets things work in his favor all the time, just creating some crazy coincidences for him. He can't control this quirk at all, and he isn't even aware of it. He thinks he's quirkless, and he pretends he has a quirk, but he doesn't even know he actually does have a quirk. Although, like I said, it's just as likely that he could be quirkless here. But still, it's pretty funny to give him a quirk like this, especially with how overpowered it could be. For Mob stats, his power is at a 1 normally, but at 5 when he's enhanced with his Esper abilities. And with Explosion, we'll just put it at question mark. For speed,
Easy.
again it's 1 normally, but when enhanced with his
He
quirk,
ain't got no
it's
stats
at a
until
4.
he actually locks a fucking.
For technique, it's at a 6. From a young age, he had mastery over his quirk, and he could even use it beyond what people assume are surface capabilities of his. He could do really crazy stuff with it. For intelligence, he's at a 3. He's an average student. For cooperativeness, let's also put that at a 6. It's pretty infectious, and he could always affect others around him too. In the entrance exam, I see no issue. His power is really effective here. And same for the sports festival, outside of the tournament at least. By now, he's rarely ever used his power to fight, and he would have to get over that hurdle here. The obstacle run would probably be an issue for him. He's not very athletic to begin with, but he can rely on his quirk at least. The cavalry battle would be insanely easy for him. Besides him being really cooperative, his quirk is perfect for this. He can grab headbands from a distance, and he could even lift his entire team up and make them all float. It's perfect for offense and defense. Many heroes would take note of his power and want to mold it, even if he doesn't make it far in the tournament, or because he'd probably get there, but I doubt he'd go too far with it, especially if he's holding back against others. For an internship, he definitely needs to work on physical abilities. His quirk is great, but his strength? That's gotta be the main focus. Maybe Gunhead could help him the same way he helped Uraraka. Funny enough, his quirk shares some vague similarities with her too, just the floating aspect. But if Reagan is here and actually does have a license like he claims, yeah, maybe he'd go with Reagan instead. In the final exams, no question he'd pass. Same for licensing. For the work study, assuming he's allowed to do this, Gran Torino might be perfect for him. Similar to Deku and All Might, Mob has a lot of power he needs to fully control. He's already good, but in terms of how it interacts with his emotions, that's an issue. So it's kind of out of the league of what Gran Torino's already familiar with, but it at least has some vague similarities in terms of what he had to teach All Might and Deku. And also, once again, Reagan's obviously a perfect choice. He probably lucked out and got a license somehow, and Mob would be the only one working with him. But he'd definitely be helpful. If during any of these events he encounters something like Stain, that would be a huge issue. Of course, we aren't doing that here, but it's worth mentioning because that could cause a quirk explosion, especially in a case like that. For his motivation, he wants to open up more and find his place, as well as fully accepting himself. He actually never was sure of what he wanted to do after middle school, so that part of his character from the actual story could work here. And once again, both as a mentor and role model.
Bro, you gonna have my
Reagan
nigga
are-
Yusuke? Bro, is my nigga Yusuke gonna be in it? Luffy, hero name. Let's fight Tama.
Civilian
Oh
and his
shit,
boss.
I just spoiled myself.
Next, Monkey D. Luffy. His quirk is Rubber, or Gum Gum, or Gomu Gomu, whatever you want to call it. It's the same as his Devil Fruit. His body has the properties of rubber, and here, he could actually swim. Nothing prevents that. For a quirk awakening, he could turn other things into rubber. Since he has a multitude of abilities, just like other characters, we're gonna have to exclude some stuff, like the whole Nika lore doesn't exist here, and his hockey abilities wouldn't be included either. Although, like I alluded to with Yuji, in My Hero Academia it's stated people can often discover that their quirks work differently than they first thought. So maybe Luffy would later on discover the fact that his quirk isn't just a rubber quirk, and it works like Gear 5th does. For power, he's at a 3. He could boost his attacks with rubber punches and such too. For speed, he's at a 4. This could also be boosted with rubber. For technique, he's at a 5. For intelligence, he's at a 2, and for cooperativeness, I'd say 4. Maybe even a 5. Plus, he'd probably have other ways to use his quirk, like Gear 2nd and 3rd, although not 4th. But I don't see any reason to restrict the former two. And like Giorno, I don't think he'd even enter this school. You know what role is perfect for him though?
Yeah, he's definitely not a hero. Luffy is way too much of a I'm gonna do my own thing type of nigga. He's even more of that than Goku. Because Goku, you could argue, is like lawful good or OG Dragon Ball neutral good. Luffy's chaotic good to the team, my nigga. Luffy is not about to be trying to deal with all these tests and regulations. He's not doing all that. I ain't gonna lie.
Being a vigilante. So no, he wouldn't be a pro hero. Could he be one? Yeah, I feel he could pass the curriculum, but he definitely wouldn't want to follow all the standards and regulations of being a licensed hero. The best part is, we don't need to make a hypothetical younger version of him to enter UA. Since he's a vigilante, he could just be as is. Everything is just based off how he was in the first arc. He'd have to avoid getting himself in trouble, while also being an unrestricted vigilante and fighting to move up as far as he can. His motivation is the fact that he wants to become the #1 hero, even with the fact that he's not licensed. It's a pretty straightforward motivation, just like he wants to become Pirate King. Although there's no One Piece for him to find here. It's a pretty straightforward motivation for him. He definitely likes to do his own thing. And maybe he'd find some fellow vigilantes to work with along the way. I don't think he'd have a specific mentor here, but for a role model, definitely All Might, the #1 hero. And if Ace exists in this universe, he'd probably be another role model. And a fellow vigilante, obviously with a fire quirk. Surprisingly not related to the Todorokis though. Or Luffy for that matter. At least by blood. So that's everyone I mentioned in the beginning. But I actually have one more person to briefly cover. Saitama. So he wouldn't be going through the hero course because, well, knowing him, I feel like he'd go through the same arc he went through in One Punch Man. And hopefully he'd find some way to become an actual hero. The question is, how far would he make it as a pro? Well, he's a hero for fun at first, and he'd be doing this to find some sort of fulfillment. So pretty much like in his story, he'd be an official hero but stuck in a lower rank, trying to move his way up. His quirk is called Broken Limiter, which just gives him amazing physical power. For stats, he'd have a 6 for power, a 6 for speed, maybe a 3 or 4 for technique, probably a 2 or 3 for intelligence, and maybe a 2 for cooperativeness. He definitely wouldn't get the recognition he deserves, but he would also have great physical power. But there's one thing I didn't cover. What is everyone's hero name? These are names they'd give themselves and it should fit their quirks, but they can also base it off what other people call them. For Yuji, Tiger might fit because this is based on the nickname he had in high school because of his crazy strength, taken right from JJK. It also fits with the slashing aspect of his technique because Tiger Claws. I also did consider Eye of the Storm from Kenjaku, but that doesn't really fit much here, especially as a hero name. And any nickname from Sukuna also wouldn't fit either. They're not very heroic names. But who knows?
Nigga, imagine nigga try to say nigga name the King of Curses. Yeah, fuck that.
Even go by a name like the Cog to represent how he feels as a hero, if he ever reaches a point like he did in Shibuya. For Asa, this might sound uncreative, but his hero name could be Black Clover. I'd imagine his quirk would have some sort of black energy surrounding it. It could even be based on a name he had from one of the chapter titles.
Flaw the world is better, nigga.
Like the Flaw. Even though it has kind of a negative connotation, it fits with how his powers work. As in, his anti-quirk is the world's flaw. For Giorno, he's not a hero, so no hero name. He definitely would have his normal nickname, Gio, aka Jojo. He doesn't really need a code name though, and maybe it's just something simple like that. For Gon, this one's a bit tough since he never got a true nickname, so as a hero he could be something simple like Hunter, based on his survival skills, or we could also name him something like The Light. The latter is based on the fact that he's always compared to light, mainly Killua saying Gon is light itself. In verse, an explanation would be that his quirk generates a powerful light, so it's a simple name fitting for a simple enhancer. It fits on multiple levels. Goku's name could also be simple and fit his quirk, Uzaru or Great Ape. Using the name Kakarot wouldn't make much sense because it's not an actual word, like I guess you could say because his outfit's orange. People would say it looks like a carrot, but that's kind of a stretch. Another fitting name would be Monkey King, as a name for Son Wukong and now for Goku. That also makes me wonder if he'd be taking Loud Cloud's place as the new Wukong guy. For Ichigo, Strawberry. Or maybe even just go by his quirk name as Soul Reaper or Shinigami. Whatever version of the name he doesn't use,
nigga,
even though they mean
nigga, saucy go.
Same thing. For Edward Elric, it's a simple name. The Full Metal Alchemist. Or Full Metal for short. For Shigeo Kageyama, it would just be Mob. It's a familiar nickname for him, and he'd probably just want to go by this. For Luffy, also a pretty simple nickname, his vigilante name would be Straw Hat. For Saitama, Caped Baldy was chosen for him, not by him. So knowing his luck, it might end up as his name somehow, if he gets really unlucky. But the obvious hero name for him, if he's choosing it at least, would be One Punch Man. When looking further into each character's motivations and backstory, you could see that it's not really straightforward, especially when some of these characters have multiple powers, like Yuji's blood.
Yeah, the difference is between this, like My Hero and other verses, that My Hero, the path to power is very regulated. Like you gotta take exams, this, that, and a lot of verses, especially like Dragon Ball, One Piece, you can get your own path to power based off just what you want to do. Like One Piece, you find a devil fruit, you explore all that. Dragon Ball, you train under a good martial artist, you know what I'm saying, you awaken your ki, some. Like, in terms of just overall regulations and what you need to do to get stronger, My Hero is definitely one of the harder verses. Or at least one of the less freedom verses, because you have to do all this stuff to get stronger. But that being said, it's your boy Jay. Shout out to Salad Bar. Stay healthy, stay wealthy, and stay blessed.